I took on the night shift at a gas station to make ends meet. Money was tight, and I needed a second job to cover expenses. The job itself was usually quiet, with occasional customers stopping by for fuel or snacks, until a few months in when things started to get unsettling. Around 2 a.m., this tall, unkempt guy with long, messy hair began showing up regularly. He always bought alcohol but never gas, which struck me as odd. He started calling me Rob, despite my name being something else, and he often seemed intoxicated, mumbling to himself and sometimes just staring blankly at the shelves. One night, he was noticeably more agitated than usual. He introduced himself as Bob, but it felt like a made-up name. He went on a rant about how the government had ruined his life by taking away his job. It was unsettling, but I tried to keep calm and polite, though his demeanor was increasingly erratic. He abruptly left that night, and I didn't see him for about a week. Story returned, it was during a fierce storm. He came in looking even more disheveled than before, soaked to the bone without a raincoat or umbrella. His dark clothes were drenched, and he stood by the entrance, staring blankly ahead. He muttered something about having done something terrible and needing a place to hide. My heart raced as I realized this situation was escalating into something beyond my control. As I nervously searched for him in the darkened store, the power suddenly went out, plunging the entire gas station into darkness. Armed only with a flashlight, I cautiously made my way towards the back of the store, where I heard faint noises. In the shadows, I found him lurking, his eyes wide and filled with a frightening intensity. Without warning, he lunged at me, screaming threats. I managed to push him away and sprinted back towards the front of the store. In a panic, I dialed 911 and explained the situation to the police responded swiftly, arriving within minutes. Together, we cautiously entered the darkened store. They found him hiding in the back room, huddled in a corner like a wild animal. His pupils were dilated, and it was clear he was under the influence of something strong. They swiftly took him into custody. It wasn't until later that I learned his real name was Martin. He had a history of violence and had brutally killed his ex-wife, possibly on the same night he came into our gas station. The realization chilled me to the core. The encounter left me deeply shaken and traumatized. I vowed never to work another night shift, or any job that put me in a vulnerable position like that, ever again. The experience taught me the importance of safety and vigilance in any work environment, especially during late hours. I used to stay out late at night with my friends when I was younger, hanging out until early morning. We thought it was cool then, but looking back, it seems like a waste of time. Because of this, I've driven a lot at night, when drunk drivers and strange people are often on the roads. One weekend night, around 4 a.m., I was driving home after dropping off a friend. Before heading home, I stopped at a gas station I usually used, not far from my parents' house. As I walked towards the building to pay, a short guy in a hood stopped and stared at me. I asked what was up, but he didn't say anything, so I kept walking, thinking he seemed like a typical sketchy person. Inside, I paid for gas and bought a lottery ticket. When I returned outside to fill up, the area was deserted, just as I expected at that hour. After filling up, I got back in my car and started driving home. Halfway home, I heard something behind me in the car. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw someone in the back seat staring at me. I screamed loudly, slammed on the brakes, and yelled at the person to get out. It was the same guy from the gas station. I opened the doors and screamed for help, knowing people would hear me and come out. Some neighbors turned on their porch lights and came outside. The guy got out of my car and threatened me, saying he could have hurt me. As he ran away, I didn't chase him but thanked the people who came out to help. I continued home, making sure he wasn't following me. That was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. It took place in the 1960s near Atlanta when I was about 8 or 9 years old. My dad taught at a school far from our home, so we drove early each morning. We often stopped at a small gas station where an attendant would fill our tank and wash the windows. One morning, the station was empty, which was unusual. My dad honked the horn, but no one came out. Later, we found out from the newspaper that the attendant had been murdered in the station's bathroom. It seemed like a robbery because all the money was gone. It scared me to think what might have happened if I had used the bathroom there that morning. After that, we never went back to that gas station again. Working the night shift alone at a gas station from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. was my life for a whole year, and let me tell you, it was a roller coaster ride through the strangest, scariest, and sometimes most surreal moments of my life. First off, the staffing situation was a nightmare. Every new hire seemed promising, but without fail, they'd pull a no-call, no-show, leaving me to cover not just my shift, but often the first shift too. To make matters worse, our manager lived 2 hours away and hardly ever showed up, so I couldn't rely on anyone for backup. Now, let's talk about the customers. Most were fine, just regular folks needing gas or snacks late at night. Some were downright entertaining characters who made the long hours bearable with their stories. But then there were the creeps. Being a woman alone at night, I was a magnet for unwanted attention. I can't count the times I was aggressively hit on, or the 3 terrifying instances where I narrowly avoided physical assault, usually because another customer walked in just in time to scare the creep away. Drugs were another big issue. People offered me drugs, did drugs in the store or nearby, or were openly selling drugs outside. The stress and exhaustion of the job sometimes led me to try things I'd never consider otherwise. I was overworked, sleep-deprived, and making a measly wage of $7.75 an hour, despite repeatedly asking for a raise and being denied every time. The workload was insane too. As the sole person on duty, I had to juggle a mountain of tasks, stocking shelves, managing the cash register, cleaning, and dealing with customers, all while trying to stay alert and safe. It took a toll on my mental and physical health. The stress was so intense that it triggered my first bipolar episode, landing me in the hospital. In summary, working alone at a gas station at night is wild. If you have strong impulse control, no underlying mental health issues, no susceptibility to drug abuse, a full and reliable staff, supportive management, proper nutrition, and are a man, let's face it, being male in this situation comes with fewer risks. I've heard it can be the easiest job in the world. But for me, and many others in similar situations, it was a harrowing experience that I'm still recovering from. I was a newly single mom of 2 small boys on a very long road trip from Oklahoma to visit my parents in South Carolina. After driving most of the night, I needed a coffee pick-me-up and the kids were restless after sitting for hours in their car seats in our little pickup truck, so I pulled up at a gas station/truck stop for refreshments. We are the only customers in the store. After using the facilities, I made the mistake of telling the boys they could pick out their own snacks. I'm carrying my 2-year-old and he promptly points to a Snickers and claims it as his choice. Great. Now for Ryan, the 5-year-old. But wait, now the younger one has changed his mind and wants potato chips. I put back the candy bar and grab a bag of chips. No. Not the blue bag, the green bag. Well, maybe the orange bag. Or the purple bag. Finally settling on a bag of pretzels, I again focus on helping Ryan decide what he wants. The little one starts squirming and has now decided he wants ice cream instead. At this point, Ryan rolls his eyes and asks if he can pick out a box of movie theater candy from the rack near the cash register. I was trying not to roll my eyes too, and give Ryan permission. I tell my little guy that this is his last choice, so we go pick out an ice cream from the freezer. I turn around to see what Ryan chose, and he is gone. The cashier said she didn't notice him leaving. My adrenaline immediately spikes, but I tell myself he is just on the back side of one of the shelves, or had returned to the restroom. But he isn't. He isn't anywhere. I am screaming his name and in a full-blown panic. I run outside, still toting the baby, and the ice cream, and note that there are still no other customers in the parking lot. I am hoarse from shouting and turn to go back inside to call the police, when my son suddenly leaps out from behind a large trash can and literally yells, "Boo!" I am so stunned, upset and relieved that I kneel down and pull him into a 3-way hug with his brother while simultaneously giving him a spanking with my free hand. All the while I am crying that he better not ever do that to me again. He of course starts crying too. Eventually we both calm down and I put on my adult mom hat. I ask him, "Ryan, you know we have talked about strangers. Going off by yourself like that could be dangerous. What would you have done if a stranger had come up to you while you were outside all by yourself?" He looks a bit perplexed, then proudly responds, "I'd tell him not to do drugs." Mom failed. When I was working at a gas station as an assistant manager with my best friend of 30 years as the other assistant, she had been a manager at another store and roped me in to be her assistant, then brought me with her to this other location which I loved, but I never wanted to work at a gas station. We were there running the show with, I think, one cashier on an extremely busy day near the end of the summer on an island everyone wants to go to the beach at for whatever reason. I mean, I get it, it's a beautiful and quiet island, beautiful beaches, free parking, well, there is a paid parking lot now as well, but still plenty of free spots, and some great restaurants, as well as my favorite pub ever. I just like the small town feel here when these non-residents are not here. Yeah, I fell in love with this place and then a man I met here and moved to this quaint place to spend my life with. The gas station had one restroom, and it is the only restroom that is 100% open to the public on the island, unless there is an event and a few porta-johns were rented. There was, as usual, a crowd in the store. One long line checking out, and an even longer line of people waiting to use the restroom. This one woman finally gets her turn, but a moment later, certainly not enough time to finish her business, she walks out and into the office, just to the right of restroom, where my best friend is working on something. I'm watching, and then the smell hits me, explaining why no one went in just after her. I started dry heaving and tried to hold my breath. My poor friend had to deal with this and I am so glad it wasn't me. Sorry bestie, not sorry, seriously though, she has a much stronger stomach than me. The poor woman had messed herself before she could make it to the toilet because of the long wait. Unfortunately, as she was trying to get something to clean the restroom with, she was still having an accident in her shorts and it literally plopped onto the floor of the office in places. She got back into the restroom and her daughter brought her a change of clothes. I guess she cleaned up the best she could and my friend sanitized everything and cleaned the office, throwing all of the rags in the garbage. Neither of us will forget that day, as it was the nastiest thing I ever saw, and I've seen plenty, in a gas station, working in one or not. And my best friend and I can laugh about it now, especially at me dry heaving so bad I had to go outside with tears streaming down my face, and I never got anywhere close to the action. I'm sure that poor lady will never forget the day she at the tiny station either. I just hope she doesn't cringe too much. We know it wasn't her fault.